So let me just jump in 1 second and we can continue on. Why do you guys do it then? There must be something deeper than just, the money, because I'm sure you guys could probably do other businesses that would. We're here talking about co-working, co-living, and just the future of that industry with remote work, correct? And we're probably going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. If you guys, number one, we're going to be talking for about 20 minutes. Please put your questions down in Slido, and then we're going to be able to do a really long Q&A so that you guys can get as much feedback as humanly possible. Because we've got 4 experts here from very different parts of the world, very different stories. I think this is going to be pretty interesting. So why don't you guys just introduce yourselves, because I feel that that's probably better than me kind of introducing you and screwing everything up. Why don't we start over here with Miss Selena.
My name is Marcela, but I'm recently called Selena very often. I'm from Colombia, and I'm the employer brand ambassador of Selena. For those of you who have never been in a Selena, we are a hospitality network with over 50 locations in 14 countries, and it's basically an ecosystem for nomads. It's a place where you can work, stay, interact, live, and play. It's a hotel. We have more than 150 rooms in each Selena, which is also a dorm or a private suite, right? So it's the range of accommodation that fits your pocket, of course, with co-working and co-living opportunities, wellness, restaurant, recording studio. So it's everything in one place. So that's Selena, and I'm very excited to be here.
Nat?
Good. Hello, everyone. My name is Nat Orea. I'm co-founder of Nest Coworking in Mexico. Also, I'm a co-working and co-living consultant. I advise the Mexican government for technology and innovation, and also own a software development company. So that's pretty much what I do. Nice to meet you. Or Mexican Heron, as they call me.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm from Australia. I live in Bali. I've got a software company for the last 20 years and a digital agency. Been running that remotely for, 17 years or something. And I've got a co-working space, Dojo, Bali, and Ubud here in Bali as well. And we've got a co-living space. And we're building a village, which is a co-living, co-working concept. Yep.
Woo! Just honorable mention here, like Steve from Ubud. Yeah. The conference would not exist without Steve. I remember meeting him in Ottawa, Canada, about 2.5 years ago. So the funny thing is that Steve is one of the people that put together Ubud, and originally a founder of Ubud. And I met him about 2.5 years ago, and we said, hey, we have this idea that we want to run a conference on remote work. And funnily enough, we're both from the same hometown. Oh, wow. So he had flown back, and I said, I have to meet you. And he was like, who is this guy? Okay. I'll meet him for like 20 minutes we went to the really fancy Starbucks. I thought about going to the regular one, but there's like a high-end one, and I thought, okay, this is going to be good for Steve, and it wasn't. He didn't like coffee for some reason. But then I said, yeah, I really want to do this, but we can't do it without local people on the ground. And that's so important for any type of project. You need that local person on the ground. So Steve said, okay, I'll support you. And I remember at that point, that was the push that we needed to be able to get forward. And now Dojo and a bunch of other partners now are really helping us with that local on the ground resources as well. So I really want to appreciate you guys for being able to actually make this possible.
No worries.
All right.
Pleasure.
Hi, my name is Vikram Bharati. I am originally from India. I'm half Indian and half Burmese, but I grew up in Los Angeles most of my life. In 2014, I went backpacking around the world, hitchhiking and couch surfing. What was supposed to be 6 months sort of sabbatical from my banking job ended up being a 2-year adventure around the world. And I stayed in hostels everywhere I went. And so when I was done with my journey, I realized the power of using hostels and the magic that happens of bringing people together in small spaces. And so we've launched this business called Tribe Theory, which is a chain of hostels. And has anyone ever stayed in a backpacker's hostel at any point in their lives? Wow, okay, so almost everybody. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build innovation hubs and putting them together with hostels. So every hostel around the world is going to be an innovation hub where very young entrepreneurs can come in and tap into a global entrepreneurial ecosystem. So that's the goal. We started 1 year ago. We have 5 hostels in 5 countries, and the goal is to be in 10 countries by the end of this year.
Woo. Okay, I'm gonna start off with some questions. So we chatted beforehand, 20, 30 minutes, and some really interesting stuff came out. I hope that you guys can be as honest as humanly possible, or as honest as we were in our tight discussion, as you are with everyone else here, because I think some of this stuff will be good. So, you guys are all experienced in the co-working, co-living space. A couple of you are in these hubs for the remote work movement and also the digital nomad movement, and I think they're basically different parts of the same movement fundamentally. How have you seen the space change over the last 5 years? Anyone can jump in. How has the space changed over the last 5 years for remote work in general? Positively, negatively, happily?
Yeah. I believe it's thriving. I've seen an increase, a natural increase in remote work, and that translates into more clients. But I have noticed a decrease in the quality of the remote workers that are currently using co-working spaces. If you want me to be completely honest, it used to be like these corporate entrepreneurs, they really top of the line digital nomads, but now I've seen a lot of somebody said that yesterday, the Instagram digital nomads, the Instagram douchebags coming in, sorry, but that's true. And coming in, that's what I've noticed, more clients, less quality in the people that are coming.
Yeah, I'd say I noticed that as well. It seems to be on like a second or third wave where everyone sort of jumped on the bandwagon now and see this life of like working like Sandra Bullock on the laptop, and they don't really have any skills. So when I first started Dojo, the people in there that were using the space were like, if you looked at their success about like how much money they were making at that time and their lifestyles, they were making a lot more than the people that come in now. And then the ones that are coming in now are in struggle town because they've opted out of maybe going to university or working in a normal job beforehand and gaining skills. And so it makes them struggle basically when they don't have the skills.
And where do you think that's coming from? So like, do you think that it's just there are so many more digital nomads now that that's just the next evolution of this? Or do you think that there's been a bit of a shift in terms of just fundamentally the average quality of a remote worker? So like, does that same group that was there 5 years ago still exist with this next group that's come? Or are you seeing just a generalized shift? Because I think that's quite important when looking at this.
I'd say those people have actually, they're not remote anymore.
Okay.
So you only remote for a certain amount of time and then they end up finishing it. And then like, I need stability, I need to be in one location. It's taxing being...
I think that's actually a great part for Selena to come in on, because, so for people that don't know, Selena is basically a network of hotels, hostels, high-end hostels, I would call them, and they all have co-working integrated inside of them. So, as an example, we talked about this before, you'll be able to actually get a subscription to the Selena network, and you'll be able to actually travel wherever you want inside of their network. So let's say you pay, what would be the price that you would pay for something like that?
Right now, for example, we're launching a 30-day package, and you'll pay $1,200 for 30 days, and you can stay minimum of 6 days in one location. So and you have wellness class included, your co-working and your accommodation. So it's an average of $32 per night in a private room with co-working,
So
yoga class.
I feel this is part of that infrastructure that we would need to be able to open up remote work and digital nomadism to the larger group, because you can come in, $1,200, you've got everything handled for you, your internet is good. One of the biggest issues that we have with regards to our staff is if you can't post more than 5 megabits up and down, you're on vacation until you can actually get a connection that meets those requirements.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, I'd looked at some, I'd gone to some of the Selena places earlier this year, and the internet was fantastic. And that's the critical thing that you need as a remote worker, is just like stick to the fundamentals.
Yeah, no.
Good internet, place to stay. So you're providing that.
Yes, I think that, I mean, disagreeing in a positive way with what you're saying, I think digital nomad has been a term or a connotation that maybe because of this Instagrammer has been seen in a negative way, but I see a lot of thrive in people wanting to experiment this lifestyle and wanting to try it out, right? So it's maybe the next generation trying to see other people as a role model and just realizing that they can actually travel, but it's right, they need their skills that they're not finding in university, that their organizations are not necessarily giving them, and maybe by traveling and understanding that, wow, let's have a conversation, what are you doing? Maybe that I need a skill, and that skill might be learning how to code, or learning the guitar because you can travel around the world and be a musician. So I think, I'm proud to be a digital nomad, and I'm proud to be part of that community because it led me to where I am. And talking about loneliness, yes, I was a digital nomad or a remote worker 8 years ago, and I didn't know about it. So when you connect and realize, wow, I match, I'm not a misfit, I think that is a sense of belonging that we're trying to give in Selena, that infrastructure, but that experience and sense of belonging, saying, welcome home, sort of feeling.
If I can just add quickly to that. So I'm seeing a trend that's happening in a macro sense. So I think at some point the world was local and physical. Then the internet came around, and then it became local and digital. And I think over the last 5 years, it has become global and digital. But the interesting trend I'm seeing now is the world is now becoming physical and global. And people like Selena who are building these sort of physical networks around the world, which are really connecting people in a global way physically. And with the likes of WeWorks, who are essentially creating physical spaces to connect the world. And so that trend, I think, is a very powerful sort of seismic shift that's happening in humanity. And for us at Tribe Theory, we see the power of that. And how do we build physical innovation hubs that are global in nature and create value by adding the ability for young people to come in and use the spaces. Well, we're an education company, we're a media company, we're a talent agency. And so if we're creating these global ecosystems physically, I think this trend is something that's going to define the way humanity travels, works, lives, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's like kind of a responsibility on co-working spaces or co-living spaces to sort of capture that new audience that's coming through and provide them with skills. And like you said about the university, you can't get some of the skills at university. Co-working is, for me, it's about the community, and like the major driver behind it is loneliness. And a few people have touched on that in the previous talks. And it's like, that's where you can come in and you can connect and you can bounce off someone and you can get ideas that are gonna push you forward. I just say that it would be people that are gonna go start doing remote work, it'd be better to start off by having some fundamental skills behind you before doing it. Otherwise it's gonna be a lot harder, but everyone wants that lifestyle, yeah.
Yeah, clap it up, sure. I think that's actually probably one of the biggest things that I'm currently seeing with, I would also call myself a digital nomad. I travel 3 to 6 months out of the year. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm Canadian. The winter sucks in Canada, so I leave. And that's when I'm interacting with the nomadic community, the biggest thing that I'm seeing is, okay, I'm in Playa del Carmen. I quit my job, I'm in Playa del Carmen. Okay, how are you making money?
selling avocado
That's
slices
why I'm
on-
here. I came to Playa del Carmen and I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, okay, maybe you should just pump your brakes a little bit on that one. Figure out how you can do a side hustle from like 5 to 9 p.m. while you have your regular job, generate a little bit of income, figure out how you can make that income reliably, and then go remote, and then start, doing your nomadic trek. And I think that that's something that a lot of the Instagram digital nomads are giving you that story that you can just go. And I'm really trying to protect those people to say, you don't want to come back in 6 months with your tail between your legs saying, I failed at this. You need those pieces in place first, those skills, as you had mentioned.
And the other thing is on that as well, that if you're running remote, you're really sacrificing a lot of things as well. Like you're sacrificing your family and things where you go. And I think like if you're going into a co-working space, the customer needs to sacrifice something as well. So they need to sacrifice their time getting into a community. And we've tracked user intent over the last few years. We ask a question, would you be willing to help out in the community or work on a social impact program? And that has been trending down. So
Interesting.
it was like 74% when we first opened. Now I think it's about 38%.
Wow.
But I think maybe that is because the person is so busy focused on being productive and making money that they don't really realize that there's a whole community
Right.
where we are trying to go. Selena could be perfectly seen as the McDonald's of hospitality right now. Why we're not perceived as that? Or if we are, we try to not perceive as that because we connect with the local community 6 months before we go, even 1 year before we start making market research, and our guests can interact with the local community. Our staff has to dedicate hours, and I think there's just different ways of making that balance.
I'm glad you made that association because I didn't want to make it for you. But I don't think it's negative, actually. If you go into a sketchy city where you don't know whether the food is good and you don't know the situation, you can walk into a McDonald's and you're going to be able to eat something. It's not going to be great, but it's going to be good. And I think the same
It's going to be cheap, basically.
Same thing with Selena. You can go in, I know the internet's there. Any of my staff, I would know, okay, I know Selena's going to have the internet to be able to actually make sure that worker is productive inside of some of those spaces. Let's move on to another question here, which is my personal question that I really wanted to ask you guys. It's more of a statement, and I want to know what your thoughts are on it. So the statement is, co-working is the Amazon cloud services for offices. So 10 years ago, when we really started our software companies, we were debating, should we actually have our own server racks or should we be on Amazon S3? Today, no one has that debate. If you said, oh, we're going to set up our own server infrastructure for our web app, they'd laugh you out of the room. They'd think you're insane. But 10, 15 years ago, that was not the case because Amazon really hadn't popped up, Azure hadn't popped up, and now we're seeing this trend of co-working, co-living spaces, and the infrastructure is so good now that a lot of companies, and also corporate companies, are saying we're forgetting about our office, and we're literally just saying we're going to work with co-working spaces to be able to provide that infrastructure for those employees. So I'd love to be able to hear whether you agree or disagree.
So I love that analogy, and I think it's very, very appropriate. However, I think there are some nuances that are very, very different as well. So if your cloud computing has certain parameters, and it makes sense to have scale of a few companies that can essentially provide cloud services, right? But I think with physical needs of living and working together, yes, there's clearly going to be some companies that come up that will be the AWS cloud, where it's streamlined, the same experience as a McDonald's experience. However, I think there's going to be a lot of these companies. It's not going to be winner takes all. I don't think it's going to be 2 or 3 co-working, co-living companies. It's a massive market, and there's a lot of geopolitical, local sort of nuances where I think this market is so big that there could be 10 AWSs, there could be 20 AWSs, And so I think yes to your answer. However, it's not going to be 2 or 3 companies that take it all. I think it's going to be about 20 companies that will be, the companies you go to. It's just kind of like food services. There's not just one McDonald's. There's a lot of burger joints.
It's kind of the irony of like working online and working on a computer. When you said that statement, I kind of think of it, it's like cloud services for human connection. So it's like you go in and you have like a community on demand. Because that's what I say it is. It's like go work in a library otherwise. Like if you're not engaging in a community and there's not a community there, then what are you doing there? I don't understand. So I think the irony is everyone's getting so disconnected and using all these tools and stuff like that, but they still want that human interaction.
It's almost like friends in the cloud.
Yeah, friends in the
You
cloud.
can literally just walk into Dojo and you've got friends.
Pretty
It's
much.
true, actually. When
It's
you go
actually
into
true.
Dojo, you go into Dojo within 10 minutes. You could probably ask around and you'd be getting into a fantastic conversation about a multitude of different subjects. That's the magic of co-working, particularly really nice, well-established co-working places. So
You can buy access into communities. That's the main business of it, or
Right.
one of the main truths of it.
it's community.
Yeah, it's community.
Yeah, that's what you guys are selling, in essence. Okay, cool. Thoughts?
I'm not really sure, I cannot predict that, but aligned with that, our mission statement is not to build amazing hotels around the world with the best infrastructure. It is to inspire authentic, meaningful connections. If that happens inside Selena, we're good.
Right. So I want to talk about just the general profitability of co-working, because we talk about, and when we had mentioned, there's so many co-working spaces in Bali now. There's such and there's probably a lot of people out here actually that are thinking of starting their own co-working or co-living spaces.
Totally.
So what kind of tips could you give them to be able to add into this network? Where are the faults that maybe you made that you wouldn't have made if you were starting from the beginning?
I would like to start on that.
Sure.
Co-working spaces per se are not profitable. You're looking at best 10% margins on profitability. So
Okay.
it's not a great business model by itself. But the good thing, Selena is a clear example of it. They are already utilizing hospitality, an existing hospitality platform, hotels, accommodation, restaurants, food, and they're adding the co-working value to it. So
Right.
to me, co-working is more of an added value to a pre-existing hospitality industry rather than an industry by itself. I do not know any co-working spaces, not even WeWork, because I have consulted for WeWork, I have consulted for Selena, I have consulted for Rigas, and they're not profitable. So,
Right. Okay.
If I can take that one. So the answer is co-working spaces are not generally very profitable businesses, yes. However, what we're trying to do is not trying to really build, with the idea of building physical spaces, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a massive sales engine. We're trying to build a massive funnel for ideas, talent, people, communities, investment opportunities. And so building a co-working space or just any sort of physical hospitality space for the sake of the 5 or 10% profit margins, it's a terrible business. The end result needs to be something very, very, very different. And so in our business, the profit margins are probably around 10%, which is sort of industry normal in hospitality, I would say. However, because the end goal is to be a massive aggregator of talent, young ideas, and create innovation hubs, it is a long-term game. And so if we want to scale really, really fast and build these sort of innovation hubs around the world, we do need a lot of capital. And so this is where, if you're either customer funded or venture funded, for what we want to do, there's no way we can do this being a customer funded company. It's just not possible.
So let me just jump in 1 second and we can continue on. Why do you guys do it then? There must be something deeper than just, the money, because I'm sure you guys could probably do other businesses that would be more profitable. And I know that actually a few of you have other businesses as well. Are you just really nice people? Or
Yes.
Or is that yes? It's just a yes.
He's
or
very
is there
nice.
something, because we're getting these other angles here, and I find that super interesting, because we've thought about this quite a bit. Like, conferences are not that profitable either. But for us, we just really want to put on a conference like this because this is the conference that I wanted to go to, and it didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear what your comments are on that.
My story with Dojo, like I already made my money in Australia, so previously it was all about making money, and I think then I sort of stepped out of that business and put it under management, and I was like, if I'm going to do something, it has to be done with purpose behind it. And I think that's what a community can be. And it's like, well, if you've got enough smart people that are interesting and successful and you put them in the same room, they can create a lot of change. So, like, yeah, co-working is not profitable at all. Like, do the numbers on it. Like, people come in and they see the place full. It doesn't mean it's making money. Like, our cafe loses money because we don't have a turnover on seats that you would have in a normal cafe.
Right.
The co-living makes a little bit of money, and that's that extra service, and it gets back into that whole hospitality thing. But the whole reason I'm doing it is to create like social impact. And
So it's social responsibility, fundamentally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and if that's the answer, that's fantastic. And it's just one of those things that me looking at it from the outside, and I'm sure for a lot of people that are probably part of co-working spaces now, you guys are creating these communities, and they're fantastic assets to people like me. But then I think to myself, okay, well, what drives you guys?
So
to be able to do that?
I think to what Michael was saying, like he touched on the word purpose, and I love that. For me, I think it's about intention, and it becomes very personal. Like, what is my intention in life? What do I really want to do with my life? And I think it becomes that fundamentally important to understand your intentions and your purpose in life and why you're doing this. So as a business, it's a terrible business. But for me, my intention is same as what Michael was saying, create value through creating something new. And I think we are fundamentally creating something new in the world because we're taking a concept such as a backpacker hostel, which sort of has a very negative connotation, and we're saying, wow, how do we create a brand, a global brand? How do we take something that has a negative connotation and turn it into a place of magic? And so creating a new category in hospitality, for me personally, is a challenge that I really, really want to take up. And if I fail at it, so be it. But I do want to create something new. So that is my intention, and that is why I'm doing it.
Got it.
And I think it is an internal fight in the company, not anymore right now, but at the beginning, I'll tell you two examples. Puerto Viejo in Costa Rica and Medellin, which a lot of you have been or know. In Puerto Viejo, there was a constant fight with the co-working because it was empty. And the managers or people wanted to transform that co-working in 2 or 3 deluxe, which usually cost $200. They could make more money with the deluxe than with the co-working. Normally, a conversion rate per bed in Selena is $3,000 to $4,000 when we're building the Selena, right? And why leaving the co-working and not transforming it into a suite? Because we believe that it's really going to start coming, and Puerto Viejo is going to start becoming, I'm not saying the headquarters for digital nomads, but it's in a rural area where people had no idea what a co-working was. They had no idea that you could travel around the world. And now, guess who's using the co-working? The mayor and the municipality. They're having their meetings there because it's inspiring to be there and meeting other people and the local community. In Medellin, the opposite, we thought that our initial co-working had to be small because there's a lot of co-workings already in Medellin. 1 month after we opened, it was full, and we had to open and sacrifice the suite and the deluxe because a group, for example, like Remote Year, wanted to be full every month in Medellin. So I think it's an interesting dynamic, and really believing that if this is the future of work as we're preaching, people will need more places to work at.
Is Ken here? He might not be here, but I know the Medellin location, Hotjar actually has a bunch of people that are there almost permanently. They love that location.
Yeah.
So it's very, very cool. You had a guest,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
that you wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
And
We have a special guest.
yes.
When I was picked up the first day, it was 2 a.m. I was jet lagged from my 30-hour flight. And when we were going to Outpost that they very kindly invited me to stay, my driver, Gede, was very curious to understand what remote work was. He told me he's been driving people around Bali, going to co-working spaces and co-living spaces, and he has no idea what running remote is or remote work is. And I asked him, wow, you've been waiting 5 years to ask someone what remote work is. So today he's here, he's Gede, and he's my friend now. Some of the speakers have been in his car, and now we're starting a little project. He's gonna have his phone, and he's gonna start asking every remote worker or digital nomad that jump in his car, what is remote work for them? How do they live a remote work life? And the best thing, and this is another surprise that nobody knows, not even you, Liam, is that in Selena we're having a road trip for Nomads in October. We're traveling around 7 locations in Mexico. And Gede is gonna join us in that trip and be a remote worker himself in Mexico. It's gonna be in October, so we have enough time to figure out visa, passport, whatever we need to do for you to be with us and be a remote worker yourself. And maybe inspire other drivers to understand what is remote work, because, and I will wrap it up, Gede is part of the ecosystem. He's driving people, and sometimes we're too busy on our phones or working or having calls, and we don't have time to spend 2 minutes conversation to explain our lifestyle or even explain his lifestyle, where he lives. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that everyone is part of the ecosystem, even if they are outside a co-working space or a co-living space. And yeah, many people in Bali have no idea what we're doing here, and it's good that he can become an ambassador and tell local people what's actually happening in Bali the past, I don't know how many years.
Gede, have you ever been to Mexico before? Get ready. Okay, so.
And this guy is gonna teach him how to code.
Yes.
That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go around Mexico, and he's gonna get trained in coding. So
Okay.
possibly by the end of the trip, he's gonna be fully employed.
Amazing.
Make sure you follow his trip. His dream is to be a YouTuber, so now maybe with all your views, we're gonna make it happen.